The laughter echoed through the room, sharp and cutting, as my husband leaned back in his chair. You? Start your own business? He chuckled, shaking his head. That's the funniest thing I've heard all day. Stick to your little hobbies, okay? Leave the real work to me. I felt my cheeks flush with a mix of embarrassment and anger. It wasn't the first time Alex had dismissed my dreams, but this time it felt personal. I had spent weeks researching, planning, and pouring my heart into the idea of launching a small online store, a dream I had nurtured since before we were married. Yet here he was, laughing it off like it was a joke. As I looked at him, his smug expression lit by the soft glow of our dining room chandelier, something inside me shifted. I couldn't pinpoint the exact moment, but it was as if the rose-tinted glasses I'd worn throughout our marriage shattered in an instant. This wasn't the supportive partner I thought I had married. This was someone who thrived on keeping me small. I pushed my plate away, suddenly nauseous. I was serious, Alex, I said, my voice trembling but firm. I've already saved enough to get started. He cut me off with a dismissive wave of his hand. Saved enough? With what? My money? His tone dripped with condescension. You barely contribute as it is, Emma. Let's not get carried away. His words stung, but they weren't entirely surprising. Over the years, Alex had mastered the art of belittling me while disguising it as playful banter. At first, I brushed it off, thinking it was just his way of joking. But this time, it felt different, crueler, more deliberate. I didn't respond. Instead, I excused myself and retreated to our bedroom, where I could let the tears fall freely. As I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the vision board I had taped to the wall, I felt a pang of regret. Was he right? Was I foolish to believe I could do this? But then something caught my eye. A receipt poking out of the pocket of Alex's jacket, which he had carelessly tossed onto the chair earlier. Curious, I walked over and pulled it out. My breath hitched as I read the details. An expensive dinner for two at a restaurant I'd only dreamed of visiting, charged to our joint account. My mind raced, piecing together the late nights, the unexplained absences, and the vague business meetings. Was Alex cheating? The thought made my stomach churn, but deep down, I knew the truth was even worse than I had suspected. I spent the rest of the night in a haze, searching for more clues. Bank statements, credit card bills, and emails confirmed my growing suspicions. Alex had been siphoning money, our money, to fund an extravagant lifestyle for someone else. Designer gifts, weekend getaways, and a suspiciously large Venmo transfer labeled "For You." By the time I collapsed into bed, my tears had dried, replaced by a seething anger I hadn't known I was capable of. Alex might have laughed at my dreams, but he had no idea what I was capable of when pushed to my limit. As the first rays of dawn crept through the curtains, I made a silent vow to myself. I wouldn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, I'd play my part, smile through the lies, and wait for the perfect moment to strike. Alex thought he held all the cards, but he was about to learn just how wrong he was, because I wasn't just planning to take back what was mine. I was planning to destroy everything he held dear. Alex and I met during our senior year of college. He was charming, confident, and had an air of ambition that made him magnetic. At the time, I was focused on graduating and starting a career in marketing, but Alex swept me off my feet. Our whirlwind romance was like something out of a movie. Late-night drives, surprise flowers, and promises of a future filled with success and adventure. When we got married 2 years later, I truly believed we were a team. We moved into a modest apartment, pooling our resources to build the life we had dreamed of. Alex had landed a decent job in sales, and I worked part-time while taking freelance projects on the side. We weren't rich, but we were happy, or so I thought. Looking back, I realized the cracks in our relationship began to show early on. Alex had a knack for turning every disagreement into a power play. If I wanted to discuss finances, he'd brush me off with a smug grin, saying, "Leave the numbers. To me, Em, you're better at the creative stuff." It seemed harmless at first, even endearing, but over time, his dismissive attitude started to feel less like a quirk and more like a deliberate attempt to keep me in the dark. Then came the First major red flag. I had just finished a large freelance project and received a payment that I was excited to put toward our savings. When I showed Alex the deposit, he smiled and said, "Great job, babe," before suggesting we use it to buy a new entertainment system for the living room. "We deserve to treat ourselves," he said, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. Hesitated, but his enthusiasm was infectious, and I agreed. Weeks later, I overheard him on the phone with a friend, boasting about how he'd convinced me to splurge. "She's too cautious with money," he said, laughing, "but I know how to push her in the right direction." His words stung, but I brushed them off, convincing myself it was just a misunderstanding. Over the years, Alex's behavior became more controlling. He insisted on managing our joint finances, claiming it was more efficient. "One less thing for you to worry about," he'd say with a wink. At the time, I was too busy juggling work and supporting him in his career to question it. I trusted him completely, or maybe I just wanted to believe the best in him. But there were other signs I ignored. Alex had a habit of belittling my ambitions, masking his critiques as jokes. When I mentioned wanting to start my own business, he laughed and said, "What are you going to sell? Knickknacks and Pinterest crafts?" His words cut deep, but I didn't want to seem sensitive, so I forced a laugh and changed the subject. Then came the spending. Alex loved to show off. Whether it was buying rounds of drinks for his friends or upgrading to the latest gadgets, he always found a way to justify his purchases. "It's an investment," he'd say, or "You can't put a price on making a good impression." At first, I admired his confidence. But as our bank account dwindled, I began to worry. I tried bringing up my concerns, but Alex always had an excuse. "Relax, Em," he'd say with a grin. "I've got it under control. You worry too much." His reassurances were smooth, almost rehearsed, and they always left me feeling like I was the one overreacting. The real turning point came a year ago when I discovered Alex had opened a credit card in our name without telling me. The charges were staggering: luxury items, dinners at high-end restaurants, and even a weekend stay at a resort I'd never heard of. When I confronted him, he brushed it off as a work necessity, claiming it was all part of networking. "You don't understand how the business world works," he said, his tone condescending. "This is how you build relationships." I wanted to believe him, but something didn't sit right. For months, I tried to make sense of it all. I combed through our finances, trying to piece together the truth. It was exhausting, and every time I brought it up, Alex would deflect or accuse me of being paranoid. Meanwhile, my own dreams were slipping further away. I had always wanted to start an online store, a place where I could sell handcrafted jewelry and curated collections of unique items. I had even started saving for it in college, stashing away whatever I could from my freelance work. But every time I mentioned it to Alex, he'd find a way to dismiss the idea. "The market's oversaturated," he'd say. "You'd be throwing money away." I stopped talking about it altogether, burying my aspirations under the weight of his disapproval. Instead, I focused on supporting Alex, hoping that if he succeeded, our lives would improve. I poured my energy into helping him with presentations, organizing his work schedule, and being the perfect wife. But no matter how much I gave, it was never enough for him. Then came the discovery of his betrayal. The night I found that receipt for the extravagant dinner, everything started to fall into place. The credit card charges, the unexplained absences, the sudden work trips, it all pointed to one undeniable truth. Alex wasn't just irresponsible, he was unfaithful. The realization was devastating. I had sacrificed so much for our marriage, only to be repaid with lies and deceit. But even as the pain threatened to consume me, a new determination began to take root. This wasn't just about the money or the infidelity. It was about reclaiming my sense of self. I decided to keep quiet, to bide my time. If Alex thought he could continue to manipulate me, he was sorely mistaken. I wasn't just going to confront him. I was going to make him regret every choice he'd made. As I stared at my vision board that night, I felt a spark of hope for the first time in months. Alex may have laughed at my dreams, but I was about to turn them into a reality, and I would do it in a way he'd never see coming. In the days following my discovery, my mind became a storm of emotions: anger, betrayal, sadness, and above all, determination. Alex had taken me for granted for far too long, and I wasn't going to let him get away with it. But confronting him directly wouldn't work. He was too good at twisting the narrative, making himself the victim and leaving me questioning my own reality. No, I needed a plan, a way to expose him without giving him a chance to weasel his way out. I began gathering evidence. Late at night, when Alex was snoring away in bed, I would quietly slip out of the room and sit at my laptop, piecing together the puzzle of his betrayal. Credit card statements, receipts, emails, every little detail added to the growing mountain of proof. It wasn't easy. Alex was meticulous in covering his tracks, but he had underestimated my resolve. One evening, I found a clue that confirmed my suspicions. Hidden in a folder labeled work expenses on his laptop was a series of emails between Alex and a woman named Sophie. They were flirtatious, even explicit, and one email included a confirmation for a weekend getaway. The dates matched the mysterious resort charge on our joint account. My heart pounded as I read through them, each word a dagger twisting in my chest. But instead of breaking down, I saved everything, documenting it meticulously, pretending everything was fine while knowing the truth was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. Every morning, I greeted Alex with a smile, kissed him goodbye as he left for work, and acted as though nothing was amiss. Inside, though, I was seething. Every time he looked at me with that smug, carefree grin, I had to bite my tongue to keep from shouting the truth. "Hey, babe," he said one morning, sauntering into the kitchen. "I was thinking we should plan a little vacation. Maybe the Maldives? I've been working so hard, I deserve a break." I forced a smile, gripping my coffee mug tightly to steady my shaking hands. "That sounds great. Let me know when you're free, and I'll start looking into it." He chuckled, leaning down to kiss my cheek. "That's my girl, always on top of things." As he walked away, I felt a surge of bitterness. The audacity of him to plan a vacation using my money while sneaking around with another woman was almost laughable. But I stayed calm, knowing that every lie he told would only make my eventual victory sweeter. The next bombshell came when I noticed a significant withdrawal from our joint savings account. My stomach sank as I logged into the bank's online portal and saw a transfer of $15,000 to an account I didn't recognize. My first instinct was to confront Alex, but I stopped myself. If I acted rashly, he would only find a way to cover his tracks or manipulate the situation. Instead, I called the bank and requested details about the transaction. The representative was helpful, confirming that the account belonged to Alex and was linked to a credit card I hadn't known about. It became clear that this money wasn't for work expenses or even a legitimate purpose. It was for Sophie. My hands trembled with rage as I thanked the representative and hung up. I sat in silence for what felt like hours, the weight of the betrayal pressing down on me. But then, a spark of clarity cut through the anger. This wasn't just about the money, it was about taking back control. Alex thought he could treat me like a fool, but he was wrong. I wasn't the same naive woman he had married. I started researching Sophie, determined to understand her role in Alex's deception. It didn't take long to find her social media accounts. Her posts were a goldmine of information, each one more incriminating than the last. Photos of lavish dinners, designer handbags, and cryptic captions like, "spoiled by my favorite man," painted a clear picture. The kicker was a post featuring a bracelet I had noticed on one of Alex's credit card statements. The caption read, "Best surprise ever." I stared at the screen, my blood boiling. Alex wasn't just stealing from me, he was flaunting his betrayal. I took screenshots of everything, adding them to my growing folder of evidence. One evening, as Alex sat across from me on the couch, scrolling through his phone, I asked casually, "Do you ever think about how we've built our life together? How much trust that takes?" He looked up, his brow furrowing slightly. "Of course, Em. Why do you ask?" I shrugged, keeping my tone light. "Just wondering. Trust is everything, don't you think?" He smiled, reaching out to squeeze my hand. "Absolutely. We're a team, babe." The hypocrisy of his words made me sick, but I kept my composure. Let him think I was clueless. The longer he believed his lies were safe, the better my plan would work. To push Alex further, I concocted a plan to confirm my suspicions about his whereabouts. One Friday evening, I told him I had an important work meeting that would keep me late. "Don't wait." "Up," I said, kissing him goodbye. As soon as I left the house, I parked a block away and waited. Sure enough, within 30 minutes, Alex emerged, dressed to the nines. He got into his car and drove off, and I followed at a safe distance. My heart pounded as he pulled into the driveway of an upscale apartment complex. Sophie was waiting for him at the door, her arms wrapping around his neck as he leaned in for a kiss. I took a photo, my hands steady despite the storm of emotions swirling inside me. This wasn't just about catching him in the act, it was about building an airtight case. I stayed long enough to watch them disappear inside before driving away. The image of their embrace burned into my memory. Over the next few weeks, I finalized my plan. I met with a lawyer, ensuring that I could secure my finances and protect myself when everything came to light. I also started quietly shifting my savings into a separate account, ensuring Alex wouldn't have access to it. Meanwhile, I continued to play the role of the oblivious wife. Alex had no idea that every move he made was fueling the fire of his own downfall. Each time he laughed at my supposed ignorance, I felt a surge of satisfaction. He was digging his own grave, and I was more than happy to hand him the shovel. The stage was set and the pieces were falling into place. All that remained was to pull the trigger. And when I did, Alex would never see it coming. The moment of reckoning came one Saturday morning when Alex's arrogance reached a boiling point. As I sat sipping my coffee and scrolling through emails, Alex strolled into the kitchen, grinning smugly. He tossed a receipt onto the counter, a purchase, from a high-end jewelry store. "Got something special for a client," he said nonchalantly, pouring himself a cup of coffee. A little gift to seal the deal. I froze, my heart pounding as I recognized the store name. It wasn't for a client, it was for Sophie. I could feel my hands trembling, but I forced a smile. "That's thoughtful of you," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "Clients must really appreciate your generosity." He smirked, clearly enjoying his little charade. "It's all about building relationships, babe. You wouldn't understand." That was the last straw. Alex had spent months deceiving me, draining our finances, and mocking my trust. It was time for me to act. I glanced at the clock, mentally rehearsing the steps of my plan. Every detail had been carefully crafted, and now it was time to execute. After Alex left the house, I sprang into action. The first step was securing my assets. I logged into our shared bank account and initiated a transfer of the remaining funds to my personal account. It wasn't much. Alex had already drained most of it, but it was enough to cover my immediate needs. Next, I contacted my lawyer to confirm the timeline for filing the divorce papers. Everything was ready. I just needed to deliver the final blow. My lawyer, a sharp and no-nonsense woman named Clara, reassured me that the evidence I had gathered would make my case ironclad. "You've done your homework," she said, reviewing the folder I had shared with her. "Once this goes public, Alex won't have a leg to stand on." Her words gave me the confidence I needed to move forward. This wasn't just about ending my marriage. It was about reclaiming my life and making sure Alex faced the consequences of his actions. That evening, I invited Alex to dinner. I wanted to set the scene for the ultimate confrontation, a moment he would never forget. I cooked his favorite meal, lit candles, and even wore the dress he had once claimed made me look perfect. Everything about the evening was designed to lull him into a false sense of security. As we sat across from each other, the flickering candlelight casting shadows on the walls, Alex seemed relaxed, even smug. He talked about work, his plans for an upcoming business trip, and how proud he was of his latest deal. I nodded along, playing TIs. "By the way," I said casually, swirling the wine in my glass, "I found something interesting today." Alex raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "Oh? What's that?" I reached under the table and pulled out the folder containing all the evidence I had gathered. I placed it in front of him, the weight of its contents palpable. "This." His smirk faltered as he opened the folder and saw the first page, a printout of the bank statement showing the $15,000 transfer. As he flipped through the pages, his expression shifted from confusion to panic. Receipts, screenshots, photos, it was all there, laid out in damning detail. "What is this?" he stammered, his voice shaking. "This," I said, my tone icy, "is the truth. The truth about your lies, your betrayal, and your little affair with Sophie." For the first time since this ordeal began, Alex looked truly vulnerable. He stammered, trying to explain himself, but I cut him off. "Don't bother denying it. I have all the proof I need." He tried to regain his composure, leaning back in his chair and crossing his arms. "So what? You're going to leave me? Take half of everything? Good luck with that." I smiled, pulling out the final piece of my plan. A signed letter from the bank confirming the fraud investigation I had initiated. "Oh, Alex, it's not just about leaving you. It's about making sure you pay for every single thing you've done." His face went pale as he read the letter, the implications sinking in. "You can't do this," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I already have," I replied. "The bank is investigating the unauthorized transfers, the credit card, charges, and everything else. And once the divorce is finalized, you'll be left with nothing, just like you deserve." The rest of the evening was a blur of accusations, denials, and desperate attempts to regain control. Alex begged, pleaded, and even tried to shift the blame onto me, claiming I had driven him to cheat. But I stood firm, refusing to let him manipulate me any longer. "You underestimated me, Alex," I said as I gathered the folder and stood to leave. "You thought I was weak, that I wouldn't fight back, but you were wrong. I'm done being your fool." As I walked out of the room, I felt a surge of empowerment. This was my turning point, the moment I took back control of my life and refused to let Alex dictate my worth any longer. The next morning, I met with Clara to finalize the divorce papers. With the evidence I had gathered, the case was open and shut. Alex's financial and emotional betrayal left no room for negotiation. Clara assured me that I would walk away with everything I deserved, and Alex would be left to face the consequences of his actions. As I signed the papers, I felt a sense of closure. This wasn't just the end of my marriage. It was the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter where I was in control, free from Alex's lies and manipulation. And as I walked out of Clara's office, the sun shining brightly overhead, I knew one thing for certain. Alex had underestimated me, but he would never make that mistake again. The day I stood in court, watching Alex squirm in his chair, was a moment I will never forget. He had always been so confident, so smug, as if the world existed to serve his whims. But now, with the weight of evidence pressing down on him, his usual arrogance was nowhere to be found. Instead, he looked small, defeated, and utterly exposed. The judge reviewed the evidence Clara had meticulously presented: the fraudulent bank transfers, the unauthorized use of joint funds, and the luxury purchases made in Sophie's name. Alex tried to argue, spinning his usual web of lies, but the facts were irrefutable. Every charge, every receipt, every incriminating message painted a clear picture of his betrayal. When the judge ruled in my favor, awarding me the majority of our assets and absolving me of any responsibility for Alex's debts, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. It wasn't just about the money or the house. It was about reclaiming my power. For years, I had been gaslit, manipulated, and taken for granted. But now, justice had been served. As Alex sat silently, his face a mix of shock and resignation, the judge added a final blow. He would be required to reimburse the funds he had taken from our joint account and cover the legal fees I had incurred. It was a symbolic victory as much as a practical one, a message that his actions had consequences. After the court ruling, Alex's world began to crumble. His reputation, once polished and pristine, took a significant hit. Word of the court case spread through his professional network, and clients who once trusted him began to distance themselves. He was forced to sell his car, the very one he had flaunted so arrogantly, to pay off the debts he had accumulated. Sophie, the woman for whom he had risked everything, didn't stick around. When the money ran out and Alex's charm no longer held any allure, she left without so much as a goodbye. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he had tried to win her back, but she had moved on to someone wealthier, leaving Alex to face the consequences of his actions alone. For me, the resolution wasn't just about what I had gained. It was about what I had let go of. The house, which had once felt like a prison, now became a sanctuary. I redecorated, filling it with colors and pieces that reflected my personality. I replaced the cold, modern furniture Alex had chosen with warm, inviting accents that made the space feel like home. I also threw myself into my career, channeling the energy and focus I had once devoted to keeping our marriage afloat into my own dreams. My small business, which Alex had mocked as a hobby, began to flourish. Clients appreciated my dedication and creativity, and I found myself thriving in ways I had never imagined. Looking back, I realized that Alex's betrayal, while painful, had been a catalyst for my transformation. It forced me to confront my own insecurities and recognize my worth. I had spent years trying to please a man who never truly valued me, but now I was living for myself. I learned to set boundaries, to trust my instincts, and to demand respect. I surrounded myself with supportive friends and mentors who reminded me of my strength and potential. And in the process, I rediscovered the vibrant, ambitious woman I had been before Alex's influence dimmed my light. One evening, months after the court ruling, I received an unexpected email from Alex. The subject line simply read, "I'm sorry." Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it. The message was short but heavy with regret. He admitted to his mistakes, apologizing for the pain he had caused and acknowledging that he had taken me for granted. "You deserved so much better," he wrote. "I didn't realize what I had until it was too late." I didn't respond. His apology, while appreciated, wasn't necessary for my closure. I had already moved on, and revisiting the past felt unnecessary. Some doors are better left closed. The true climax of my journey came not in court, but in the quiet moments of self-discovery that followed. One evening, I hosted a dinner party with close friends to celebrate my newfound independence. As we laughed and shared stories, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the support of those who had stood by me, for the lessons I had learned, and for the strength I had found within myself. I raised a glass and toasted to new beginnings, to reclaiming my life, and to the woman I had become. It wasn't just about surviving Alex's betrayal, it was about thriving in its aftermath. Today, my life is unrecognizable from the one I shared with Alex. I've built a successful business, cultivated meaningful relationships, and embraced the freedom to live on my own terms. The wounds of the past have healed, leaving behind scars that serve as reminders of my resilience. As for Alex, I heard through the grapevine that he's still struggling to rebuild his life. His charm and bravado, once his greatest assets, now ring hollow to those who know his true character. I don't take pleasure in his downfall, but I do take comfort in knowing that justice was served. The resolution of this chapter in my life wasn't just about achieving justice. It was about finding closure and reclaiming my power. Alex may have laughed at my dreams and tried to undermine my worth, but in the end, he only strengthened my resolve. As I sit on my balcony, watching the sunset over the city, I feel a deep sense of peace. I've learned that betrayal doesn't define you. It refines you, shaping you into someone stronger, wiser, and more capable than you ever imagined. And for that, I am grateful. Sitting on the balcony of my newly redecorated home, a warm cup of tea in my hands, I finally felt the weight of the past lift from my shoulders. The journey had been grueling, marked by betrayal, heartbreak, and self-doubt. But as I gazed at the city lights twinkling in the distance, I knew I had come out stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever. When Alex laughed at my dreams and used our hard-earned money to fund his double life, I felt shattered, as though every ounce of trust and love I had poured into our marriage had been in vain. But looking back now, I realized that betrayal wasn't my end. It was my beginning. It forced me to confront truths I had long avoided and step into a version of myself I had almost forgotten existed. I wasn't the naive woman who once sought validation from a man who never valued me. I was now someone who had built her own life from the ground up, piece by piece. I had transformed my pain into power, and for that, I was deeply grateful. Through this journey, I learned lessons that will stay with me forever, lessons I hope will resonate with anyone watching this. You are stronger than you think. In the face of betrayal, it's easy to feel powerless. But adversity reveals our inner strength, pushing us to fight back and reclaim our lives. You have more resilience than you realize. Trust yourself to rise. Self-worth is non-negotiable. For years, I let Alex's words chip away at my confidence. I stayed in a relationship that dimmed my light because I believed his lies about my worth. Never again. Your value isn't defined by others. It's something you carry within you. Revenge isn't about them. It's about you. My revenge wasn't about hurting Alex. It was about reclaiming my narrative and proving to myself that I deserved better. It was about standing up for myself and refusing to let his betrayal dictate my future. Healing takes time, but it's worth it. Recovery isn't linear, and there were days when the pain felt insurmountable. But every step forward, no matter how small, brought me closer to the peace and freedom I now enjoy. Alex's apology, while unexpected, was a moment of clarity. Hearing him admit to his mistakes validated what I had known all along, that his actions were a reflection of his flaws, not mine. But I didn't need his apology to heal. Closure wasn't something he could give me. It was something I found within myself. Letting go of the anger, resentment, and pain was the greatest gift I could give myself. Forgiveness wasn't about excusing Alex's actions. It was about freeing myself from the weight of his betrayal. It was about stepping into my future unburdened by the past. Today, my life is a reflection of everything I once dreamed of. My business is thriving, my home is a sanctuary of peace, and I am surrounded by friends who uplift and inspire me. I've even started traveling, a dream Alex once laughed at, exploring new places and rediscovering the joy of independence. Every step I take feels like a victory. The woman I see in the mirror is no longer defined by the pain of her past, but by the strength of her transformation. I've reclaimed my voice, my power, and my future, and I couldn't be prouder of how far I've come. To anyone watching this who feels trapped, broken, or betrayed, know this. Your story doesn't end here. You have the power to rewrite your narrative, to rise above the pain, and to build a life that reflects your true worth. It won't be easy, but every step forward will be worth it. Remember, you are not defined by someone else's betrayal. You are defined by how you choose to respond to it. Let their actions be the catalyst for your growth, not the anchor that holds you back. If my story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your experiences in the comments below. Let's create a community of support and empowerment. Have you faced a betrayal that forced you to redefine yourself? How did you overcome it? And if you found value in my journey, please like, share, and subscribe. Together, we can spread messages of resilience, hope, and strength to those who need it most. Thank you for being part of this journey with me. Here's to new beginnings for all of us.